Pandemic Parenting. I'm your host, Greg Freeberry, and we got a really great show for you today. Today, I'm interviewing my good friend Huzefa, who used to be a software engineer and a lawyer, and then became a math tutor, and actually an online educator, and he started a business called Scalar Learning. And you'll learn a bunch about that over the next hour. And what you'll hear a lot about is Josefa gives lots of tips on specifically for like SAT prep and math and like his strategies around all of that. But if you listen closely, a lot of Josefa's advice actually applies to not only math and SAT prep, but just school in general, or even great life advice. He talks about working hard and the mindset he has when he approached building his business, and the mindset he has when he approaches tutoring. And if you really listen to his advice, you can really amplify like all areas of your life. It doesn't have to be restricted to just academics or math or the SAT. So I'm really excited for today's show, and I think you're going to like it a lot. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Hey, welcome to Pandemic Parenting. I'm here with my good friend Huzefa Kapadia, who is a math tutor, online educator, and the founder of Scalar Learning. Huzefa, pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you.
I like to start off the show usually just with some like fun rapid fire questions, just to kind of get to know you a little bit. So let's see, what was your favorite toy growing up?
Okay, the first thing that popped in my head when you said that is the building blocks. So when I was a kid, I had these wooden blocks, and I used to build towers and make different structures.
Okay.
And it eventually moved on to Legos and stuff, but I remember those very vividly. And they were nothing fancy, just nice blocks that I could build these crazy structures. I have a picture of myself in my parents' room where I built this tall structure that I was really proud of, and I don't know, I really like those.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I was similar. I like Legos and everything. So, maybe it's like that mathematical mind is drawn to that. Who knows?
Creator, builder.
Yeah. Let's see. What's the last book you read?
I'm in the middle of one. Okay, so I believe the last one before the one I'm reading now was, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think it was Extreme Ownership.
Ooh, okay.
Or if I read one in between. So I'll tell you the last three. I can't remember the order. It was either that, The Complete Guide to Fasting, which is something I've gotten really into, intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting. And then I'll tell you the book I'm reading now. I'm just blanking on the order. And this is shameful how long it's taken me to read, because I have had less time to do my daily reading lately for a number of reasons. But it's called, I think it's called Fat, Sugar, Salt. It's on my counter right there, but I might not be getting the order right, but it's a fascinating book about the bliss point and how the food industry for decades manipulated the levels of fat, sugar, and salt, specifically sugar more than anything, and actually salt kind of goes in hand with that, to make foods more addictive and increase sales.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So you try and eat pretty clean and healthy now.
I do. So I turned 41 in June, and I work a lot. I don't know many people who work as much as I do. And to do that, I have to love what I do, but that's a given. We'll talk about that later. But I have to get good sleep, which sometimes is hard, and I have to eat clean. That's what I've realized in order to keep working at the pace that I do, and I have to exercise.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I agree with all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, what do you do in your free time?
Well,
when you have it.
Yeah. I don't have a lot, but in a way, I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day. It's like you choose how busy you want to be. Especially as an entrepreneur, I could reduce a lot of the work that I do and just maybe shrink the business or modify the business. So in a way, I choose to work and with my free time and choose to take on more hours, build out more products, whatnot, because it's what's fun, or I love working on my YouTube channel. So yes, you can call that work, but that is what I choose to do with a lot of my free time. Outside of that, I just got an air fryer, so I like to cook. I do like to cook. I wish I cooked more. Now I'm starting to.
Okay.
That's really fun. And I train mixed martial arts, and that's a blast. I do that twice a week. I actually do it almost every day, but I train with a coach twice a week. And that's become a huge hobby of mine for the last 2 years. I've always loved the sport, and I love training it. I think it's got huge benefits for students and kids as well. I've been recommending it to a lot of parents over the last few years. And outside of that, just hanging out with my friends, socializing, grabbing dinner.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thanks for that. Next, I just want to talk to you about, I know that you used to be like a software engineer and a lawyer, and then now you're a math tutor. So I was just curious, like, what was that journey like for you? How did you end up as a math tutor after being in those positions previously?
Sure. So the software kind of happened. I'll say this: when I graduated high school, I really didn't have any clue about anything other than go to a good college and then things will make sense. Well, obviously, for a lot of people like myself, I just sort of went with the flow, and I didn't really know even what to do when I got to college. Hadn't thought about majors, hadn't thought about a lot of things. And I think my motivating factor was simply financial. Hey, how do I get a really good job, aka well-paying job, and take it from there? So I randomly chose, not randomly actually, computer science was later, but I initially chose economics, sounded cool, and I think I was also doing math. Eventually transitioned to computer science because I happened to try it, thought it was awesome, also seemed like a nice, safe major to get a good job. So I switched to that, still finished in econ, found my first software job in Michigan, and started working there. And by the way, I was crazy about my grades in high school, just super obsessive. And that was another thing that happened to me in college. I lost a lot of motivation. I guess part of it is because I didn't really know. I don't know. It was just a weird time, and I was also exploring all these social things that were new to me, and so I had a lot of fun as well. But so my GPA was very mediocre when I graduated from college, and this limited my job selection. Anyways, that's just an aside. So I went to a software company that I still loved and had a great time working there for 2.5 years. It wasn't like Microsoft or some big name, right? But it was a really cool company that created software for police stations, all this stuff. I loved it, enjoyed it, really loved all the people I worked with. Then I sat jury duty, just totally randomly, and for a medical malpractice case, and I thought it was fascinating. And I talked to the attorney after the case and wanted to know more about practicing law. He gave me some information. Took the LSAT not too long after that, and then worked for, like I said, about 2.5 years, then went to law school because it seemed like that was really interesting. And the elements of law that drew me to it were the speaking in court, making an argument, weaving it beautifully, defending somebody well, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought, hey, this is a perfect fit for a lot of things I really like to do. Went to law school, loved law school to death. It was extremely difficult and rigorous, but I
imagine.
But I prepared myself for it, and that's the key. No matter what, as long as you're prepared mentally, I really had enjoyed it and had a blast. I think if I hadn't, or other people who haven't mentally prepared yourself for the amount of work, it's not as fun. So I enjoyed it. Actually, it's some of the best times of my life, to be honest. And when I graduated from law school, I was able to get into one of the best. By the way, I passed not focus because you don't really focus, but I knew I wanted to work in patent law because of my background in software and whatnot. Now, it was also patent law is lucrative. It's quote unquote, or a really good profession was growing at the time. So I said, hey, I can do it. I'm going to do it. I got into one of the best patent litigation firms in the country. So everybody was thrilled. My parents were thrilled. I was thrilled. And it was a big step. I felt like a big accomplishment. Started there and worked in law for about 4 years. Worked at this firm in DC for 2.5 years. Then eventually came to LA because I was barred in California and started working here. Now this is where I started to rethink everything because I wasn't loving it. I didn't hate it, but I was not obsessing over it. I didn't feel like it hit my natural strengths. My fantasies of speaking in court were long lost because in patent law, especially early on, for a long time, you're grinding, you're reading, you're studying case law, you're writing briefs. You don't even get to see the daylight of a courtroom if you're lucky until long down the line, not even as a senior associate. I did get to take some depositions, that was cool. But in general, it's not what it seems to be, or at least in big law, which is a lot of these large law firms that deal with a lot of corporate matters and whatnot. So that got me rethinking. the way that I arrived at tutoring, and I think this is a bit of a long answer, I apologize. I'm trying to keep it as brief as possible, but it's sort of like my life story.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's one of the most important stories, I think, to me. And then I met a bunch of like-minded entrepreneurs and thought about, what do I want to be an entrepreneur? A lot of people have done similar things, come from safe corporate positions. Well, nothing's safe, right? People say that, so you really, I shouldn't even call it safe. That's not fair. But came from these well-paying corporate positions and decided to jump ship and do something that was, again, quote unquote, risky. And they kind of hammered home to me a few points, but the most important was, it's really not so risky as you think, going off and doing something on your own, as long as you're willing to, again, expectations, right? Just like law school, you expect not to make any money for a while, and you understand that you're just going to have to dive in and work 3 times as hard as you would have previously. I was already working hard in law, so I kind of had managed expectations. And then they said, go through this exercise, write down everything that you would do if money wasn't an object. And I know it sounds like a silly exercise, but actually writing it out was really helpful for me. And we boiled down the list to 2 things that were dogs and teaching math. And I love dogs. I've loved dogs to death ever since I was a kid. I'd always be the kid going up to every dog. I feel like I have a sense and a way with animals as well. And so I thought doggy daycare. They're huge. Think about it. You get to work in a place filled with all these amazing puppies and dogs running around. That'd be incredible. Yeah, that was number 1. Number 2 was teaching math, because it was just something that I don't know what it was it something that I just enjoyed, and I felt like I had a natural ability with. People would tell me growing up, and even as an adult, if I would just help my girlfriends, at the time, my girlfriend's siblings with math homework, they were just like, hey, you can explain it really well. So I said, okay, maybe I have a natural affinity and I get a huge enjoyment out of it. And between the two, one takes a bunch of startup capital, one doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll with tutoring and just give it a go. And this is something is also something, by the way, last thing, I always had in my mind that this would be a cool business, because I saw these tutoring businesses, the really good ones, the really awesome ones back in Ann Arbor and Michigan, who would do LSAT, SAT, this and that, and who are really good at it, and just tremendous opportunity if you can do it well. That's how it began.
Oh, cool. That's cool. Huzefa and I are pretty close friends, and I don't think I've actually ever heard that story before. So that was really cool to hear that. And I have a little, a similar trajectory too. Went from engineering to finding my way, and then ended up as a math tutor too.
Yeah.
In large part thanks to you. So
yeah.
All right. So we got Huzefa's life story there, which is super interesting. To go from software engineer to lawyer, and then to math tutor and business owner. And it's quite an interesting arc, and he kind of touched on it, like something like a software engineer or a lawyer. These are jobs that we usually consider safe, and it's not that they aren't, but sometimes they're not always so fulfilling. And I think one of the key things that Huzefa mentioned just right there, and it happened so quickly, like you may have not even noticed it in passing, but he said he was prepared. So like, he prepared himself for law school. He prepared himself for starting this business. He actually sat down, he wrote down a plan. He managed expectations. And I think the key here for parents out there is that, Huzefa was successful as a software engineer, as a lawyer, and now as a math tutor. And I'm sure if he would have started that doggy daycare, he would have been successful in that as well. Why? Because he had the right mindset. He's a hard worker, he comes prepared, and he had all the transferable skills that he could take from being an engineer to a lawyer to a math tutor. So the important thing for parents to realize is that instilling those things in your kids right now, right at this moment, can help actually open their lives up to so many different options. I was very similar. I started off as an engineer, and then I became a hypnotherapist for a little while, and an online health and diet coach, before I actually settled on becoming a math tutor as well. So like very different things, but all things that I was very successful in as well. And it's because I also had the transferable skills of just being able to create a plan, staying organized, and really committing. And these are things that, well, how can you do that? How can you instill this? Well, you help your kids with their schoolwork. You actually sit down and you communicate with them. You have a conversation. What did you learn at school today? And if they start falling behind, You like sit down, like what's going on? What's happening? Why are you falling behind? We gotta get those grades up, and not just for the sake of getting grades up, right? But for the sake of like, let's create a vision for your future. All right. And what does that look like? And if you want to get to that future, this is what you have to do. Like, this is your job right now, is to get good grades, work hard in school. And then once you start instilling that mindset of being prepared, working hard, and getting those transferable skills of problem solving. You can learn problem solving through math class, or writing ability. You learn that through English class. Maybe like a little bit of debate and philosophy. You learn that in also maybe English history class, philosophy, social sciences, all this stuff. So school isn't necessarily about just that one thing. Like, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking math is just about math, or English is just about English, or history is just about history. What school really is math is about like taking learning a tool and applying that tool to a problem, right? And that applies to all areas of life. English is sure learning grammar and words, but it's ultimately about learning how to express yourself in your maximal like capacity. And history is just learning about the past, so we know not to repeat it, or we can learn from it. There's so many lessons to learn from the past. So it's all about injecting those skills now, so you can be successful as a tutor, a lawyer, a business owner, or a dog shop owner. Your kids can be successful anywhere they go. It's about building those transferable skills and that right mindset right now. All right, so next we're going to move into Huzefa's business, Scalar Learning, and how he helps kids with math and the SAT. So check it out. Now I just wanted to ask, so now you're a math tutor, and obviously you love it, and it's like your life's work. What makes you so passionate about it?
Well, it's a number of things. So we'll start with the passion has evolved over time, over the last 8 years. So it began as just showing up to somebody who felt defeated, being able to figure out. So it's a real art in terms of tutoring, and teaching and tutoring are similar but different, and as you know, but it becomes that idea of going down, sitting down with the student. Every student's different. Every student has a unique learning style. Every student is a puzzle, and figuring out how to understand how they learn, what they're not understanding, and then deliver it just in that way. A lot of the reason why I can do it, I feel so effectively, is because I'm highly empathetic, highly sensitive. Mm-hmm. And so I can kind of feel the frustration I feel in a lot of ways. And also you have to just know a lot of math, so you can try this way, that way, the other way to explain concepts. And at the beginning, it's a huge rush. I don't know what to say. It feels good to get somebody who's so defeated by a topic that math anxiety, there's no psychology anxiety, there's no science anxiety. I mean, maybe there is, but math anxiety is a real not disability. It's a real disorder that's classified by psychologists, psychiatrists, and it's acutely distressing. And to be able to go in and be like Superman and fix it, and then they come away feeling good about that, and then maybe feeling good about other things. That's how it began. Mm-hmm. And then starting to get more students and etc. Then the business has evolved. It takes on a life of its own. And by the way, I don't ever like to be called a businessman, because I don't look at myself that way. I think the best way that it was explained to me was there's different types of entrepreneurs, and I consider myself to be an artist entrepreneur. And what that means is at the core of what I do and what everything is I get to create, I get to make stuff. And where the passion comes in now is the business has evolved to now we have, we got tutors on our team, other tutors that are also, I feel like I can pick tutors really well because I've done this so long. We've got a huge social media presence, right? We got 60-some thousand followers on Instagram where I get to make math infographics that teach visually. Like, you just need a concept explained. You look at the infographic and boom, I have a YouTube channel now. We have with over 40,000 subscribers. And a lot of these numbers don't sound that big in the context of big YouTubers, but in the education space, I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve. And so now it's like, I got all these different canvases and palettes. And if you've ever read The Wisdom of the Enneagram, my personality type is in the enthusiast, and enthusiasts have lots of different interests. And for most of us, who are enthusiasts is hard, because how can you choose one thing and focus on it when you want to do a million different things?
Yeah.
Well, I've somehow found a way to do all these different things, make music, do this and that, even math music videos, whatnot, and satisfy all of this. And I think that's where the passion really started to come to a head, and just want me to work so much and do this all the time.
Awesome. You touched on your YouTube channel and your music videos, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I also wanted to ask you, you work with families every day, you see parents and students, and I'm just curious, how you've seen everyone being impacted by the pandemic so far.
I think that I have I'll answer that from two different angles. So if you look at my clients, my one-on-one clients, for example, I think that a lot of them have been able to, it's different. So for example, one thing that happened is my entire business model shifted from the pandemic, from primarily almost all in person, maybe like 98% in person, to now it's like 98% Zoom. And it's sustained that way. The reason why is because, number one, you can do an amazing job tutoring math through Zoom if you know how to do it. Again, that's a new art form, right? It's a different form of art than doing it in person, similar but different. And so that's kind of maintained. Also, just like the way my schedule has transformed and whatnot, I just can't do what I used to do anymore in person. So that was one thing. But what I would say with people who are able to supplement school, because it was difficult for a lot of teachers. It's not the teacher's fault, by the way, but it was very difficult for a lot of them to teach effectively through Zoom. Most kids were zoning out. Most kids were not engaged. And then it's all the screen time. I mean, it was too much. So for people that were able to supplement with one-on-one tutoring, and not everybody's able to, and it's really sad, but for people who were, I feel like those students didn't miss much, and in some cases actually performed better. Now, it's a small amount, but some kids really thrived during the pandemic and had more free time and etc. Then if you look at, so anyways, I would say that it's impacted education. I'd say overall it was rough for kids, but I do think it opened some eyes and some minds to the power of online education and how you can teach through Zoom, different platforms. But here's the most interesting part, in my opinion. I think what it really did was it opened people's eyes to YouTube. So now I'll talk about my perspective as a YouTuber, as a YouTube educator, I should say. Well, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember we had just passed 10,000 subscribers. So again, it's not like crazy growth from 10,000 to 40,000 in a year and a half, but it's not bad. And I think some of it was spurred by the fact that people had no other way to learn. And by the way, our channel is mostly focused on SAT and ACT prep. So what I feel is that during that time, when you have no other choice, you don't know what to do. Maybe you can get somebody to tutor you over Zoom, but they're learning it for the first time. They're not getting trained properly. I think a lot of schools didn't even have the resources or know-how on how to train to teach online. What do? You start searching, you start Googling stuff, and you come across YouTube videos. And look, I've known this for years, and a lot of awesome YouTube educators have known this for years, that you can teach so effectively through videos, especially with math. If you do it right, you do it passionately, you have good visuals, whatnot, you explain it clearly. So I think that in that respect, the pandemic has opened people's eyes to the fact that, man, you can learn a ton on YouTube and you can do it well. And man, I gotta tell you, over the last, I get so many messages on the regular now and we've even shot a bunch of testimonials where we showed this, is that student scores have grown so much on the math portion from watching the YouTube videos, not from one-on-one tutoring, not from classes, from free resources that are all available. And it's all about you taking them, spending the time, and putting in the work. So the last point on this is, what I think has been interesting about the pandemic from the side of YouTube education, standardized testing, is one of the biggest arguments against standardized testing and basically dismantling the SAT and the ACT, which I'm pro those tests. I think, at least in the absence of anything better, I don't see why they should go away, because I think they're really good metrics and they're standardized across the board. But the biggest arguments, I think, are that those few that are privileged that can afford a standardized test prep course or this and that, it's unfair and they shouldn't be able to do that. And we can talk about like that unfairness compared to what school you go to or where you live. You know, I think there's many things that are way bigger disparities than standardized tests. But what you can say is now as the YouTube community grows with the Scalar Learning channel, with Super Tutor TV, with there's a bunch of like really amazing YouTube channels that focus on standardized test prep. Well, now everybody can access it. And you can see that it's not just random stuff out there, it's quality material. And so if you have the will, there's a way.
Amazing. All right, so you just heard Huzefa say, where there's a will, there's a way. And no doubt, this pandemic has been very rough on students and parents and families in general, especially with school and like having to go remote learning. And even now, as we're coming back into school, you know, re-assimilating to life in person at school, like in the middle of a pandemic, it's been a strain for a lot of people. But at the same time, what I think it's really cool, what Josefa says, is that, you know, we live in this incredibly powerful era, the internet era, where information is literally at our fingertips whenever we want it. And people like Josefa who just put out amazing content on Scalar Learning channel for free on YouTube. So anyone with an internet connection and a computer or a device can just go on and watch it for free. And like he said, there's been so many students that have improved their scores, not even through direct tutoring, but just watching the free stuff that he puts out online, which is really incredible. This is an unprecedented time. You know, never in our history has we've had access to information like this. So, and it's not just Huzefa's channel. You know, you can get MIT education, no joke. You can go on MIT Open Courseware, and you can take all of the MIT classes online. So you can get an MIT education for free. You don't get a degree, but you know, you can get the same level of learning. Or there's other sites like udemy.com that have an infinite amount, or Coursera, that have just like an infinite amount of courses on all different types of things, you know, not even just academic stuff, but even like, you know, how to grow stuff in your garden or how to build a fort or something, you know, like all these different things. So there's so much information. There's so much good information out there. And I'll provide links for Udemy and Coursera and MIT Open Courseware in the description below. And what I really just want to emphasize is that, you know, even if you don't have access to technology, which you hopefully do if you're watching this video, but there's programs out there where you can get a free laptop if you have low income, or, you know, it's difficult for you to access technology, or you don't have a stable internet connection. You can go to your local library. You can always access computers from your local library. Like I said, I'll put a resource in the description about how you can even get a free laptop. So it's really up to you. If you're struggling with technology, you can get access. There's ways to get access. And then once you're online, there's so much great stuff out there that if you're stressed financially, you don't have to hire a tutor. Sure, tutors are great. You don't have to go to the absolute best private school in the country or whatever. I mean, those are great too. Those are all options if you have the finances. But if you're strapped for cash, you know, there are other ways. And there's like YouTube and all these other different places where you can learn, and as long as you're dedicated and you put in the work. So just wanted to emphasize that point before we move on. Josefa is going to hit you with some more knowledge right now, and this is a great interview. This is a great interview. I hope you're really enjoying it. Let's keep rocking and rolling. So do you have any specific strategies for students beyond just like finding these YouTube videos to like help them, you know, manage their time and manage this pandemic and the struggles they're going through?
Now, what do you mean in terms strategies in terms of standardized test prep, regular curriculum work?
Yeah, anything that comes to mind as far as, I guess, just improving their academics and standardized test scores.
Well, let me break it up into two questions.
Sure.
So if we talk about standardized tests, let's go specifically like SAT, for example. And I'll talk about what I know, which is the math. I have my English tutors kind of handle the English side.
Sure.
And I'm not as familiar with that element. But if we talk about math and we talk about the SAT, I will give you very specific advice. My specific advice would be practice tests are the key to doing lots and lots of practice. Obviously, if you don't understand the material, or there's certain gaps, you have to fill those in as well. But I would say in general, You can use, there's a lot of good channels. I mean, obviously I think mine is the best, right? I have to think mine is the best for math tutoring, but for SAT stuff. But so like on my channel, but even on other channels, if you want to, and by the way, again, tutor, student fit. Some people might not vibe with my teaching style, and that's okay. But there's variety now, and it's a growing variety. So you find who fits best with you. But in terms of the standardized test, take a practice test, then watch a walkthrough. Okay, so walkthroughs are where people like me go through and take the test, either in real time or in not. I feel like a big trend has now started in real time test taking. I do believe I started that. I just want to put that out there. A lot of people copy me, but that's okay. But yeah, so now there's a lot of people that do the walkthroughs in real time. So you can take the test and then watch the walkthroughs, right, afterwards. And you can see how somebody like me who's done, hundreds or whatever, how many tests, does it and explains it and whatnot. And that's a great teaching tool. The other thing you can do is there's a lot of critical concept videos, formula videos. By me, there's another guy, Ludus, amazing stuff on YouTube. And I'm blanking on the one channel that I can't think of. But anyways, so use that, fill in the gaps. But at the end of the day, once the conceptual gaps are filled in, you can start taking practice tests. And by the way, you'll also find conceptual gaps with the practice test. So I think that one of the things that I've seen certain test prep companies that have been around for a long time, what they'll do is they'll do a lot of general curriculum and then have you take a practice test down the line. I'm not really a believer in that. I think that you should start with the diagnostic, find the gaps, fill them in, and then go on. And then now in terms of general curriculum, I mean, gosh, I do think that right now things are a lot better. Kids are back in school. So a lot of the options that you had before in terms of talking to teachers, getting extra help, those are now returned. So I think those strategies are still legitimate, but hey, now maybe your eyes are a little bit more open to receiving help online. I mean, obviously we have the staples like Khan Academy that has been around forever and has millions of users, but stuff like that. And even, different companies are stepping in the game. And so I would encourage people to check out different avenues of getting video explanations.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's really cool how you're talking about how like the pandemic has kind of forced people online in a lot of ways, and now they're becoming more open to learning YouTube and all that stuff, and it's kind of like democratizing things in a lot of ways and making things more accessible. So I think it's really cool.
Absolutely. And the thing is, for me and for other folks on YouTube, there's a benefit. Like, that's the beauty of it. It all works. So we can be incentivized from just connecting with people. That's a huge incentive. Just getting, like I said, the testimonials and people saying thank you, like that makes my day every day. But we're also monetarily compensated as well through ad revenue plus, new leads. I mean, it's a beautiful ecosystem as to what they built versus, we were talking about this earlier, versus the old school model of advertising, putting stuff out, trying to get people to bite and do all this. No, like it's now become a system where I'm going to provide you value because in a way it's the right thing to do. But in other ways, if you can do it right, you get really good at explaining stuff and doing all this stuff for free. It all kind of feeds into itself. So everybody wins.
Totally. That's amazing. I also wanted to ask you, you talked about, parents that are potentially getting a tutor. Like, for those that are fortunate enough that are in position to hire a tutor, like what would you recommend they look for when they're trying to find the right tutor for their kid? Number
one is connection. I just had this conversation with a newly signed up client a few days ago. So the most important thing is connection. What do I mean by connection? They got to like the tutor and the tutor's got to like them. But, usually if you're a tutor, hopefully you're in it for the right reason and you're a people person, it's one of those things. But it's not something to, it can be difficult. Like if you're working with a student, they don't like you, and then you get this whole thing can feel personal sometimes.
Totally.
But I think the best thing to do from both perspectives, I think for tutors, the onus is on us to let families know, like, yo, you should drop me if your kid's like fighting you to work with me. Like you be the one to drop me. Don't just hire a tutor because you heard they're the best or they know this subject the best or this and that. The chemistry is above and beyond the most important thing, because when you have that mentor-mentee bond, a lot of what's going to happen behind the scenes that you can't even control but will just start to happen is the student's going to want to do it in a way partially for you to show up and be a good student for you. It's like how I want to do a good job in my MMA sessions, because I like my coach a lot, and he's a really good friend of mine. I don't want him to think badly of me, right? It's like a whole thing.
Don't disappoint him.
I don't want to disappoint him. And so that all plays into it. Then, okay, so that's the most important that I think not everybody looks at as the number one thing, because I think they think expertise comes first. Now, obviously, that's a given. They got to know the material. We can't be expecting perfection, I think, from everybody. But like for the most part, I think you want somebody. Obviously, this will affect the price point too, but you want somebody to the best degree possible where they really like that subject. They've dove into it, and sometimes you have people that they'll teach something, but they'll have to look it up, and that's okay. You're not going to have everything down. I'm not saying that's a necessity, but to somebody who's truly passionate about that subject area, and a lot of it is just in their mind, and they know how to free flow with it. I think that's an important element as well. Last but not least, not least at all, reliable. Got to be reliable. So I've talked to my students about this. I've talked to families about this. I've talked to my tutors about this. I want my students to feel like I'm a rock, right? A stability. They have a session scheduled with me on a Sunday or a Monday or whatever day it is. I'm showing up, and if I'm not showing up, I'm letting them know as far in advance as possible, and I got a backup plan for them, because a lot of times you're scheduling that session because you got a test the next day, or you've got a test in 2 days, and you're relying on them, and then you do a last minute cancellation, right? Your student's gonna freak out, have anxiety, this and that. So you want to make sure that whoever you're bringing on, either they have a system in place where if they need to cancel or this and that, they're going to do it ahead of time and get you somebody as a backup to make sure you're covered, or they themselves are, I guess, crazy enough like me where will pretty much never miss a session unless something really, really bad has gone wrong or whatnot. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. Connection, expertise, and reliability, so important for finding the right tutor. All right, boom. Huzefa dropping some serious knowledge on you guys about, for parents, how to pick a good tutor. So it's connection, expertise, and reliability. And I wanted to touch on the connection piece a little bit more. Connection is just so important. Even for someone like me, growing up as a student, I was very shy, I was very introverted, and I was awkward, but I still needed my best friends around me to operate. I think at the heart of it, humans are social creatures, and we need to have good connections. So for parents out there, the most important thing is that your students feel connected with whatever they're learning. So that might be a class in particular, it may be their school, or maybe their teacher or their tutor. All right. Also their friends. They need to have friends, good connections with their friends surrounding them, because it's all about building that social circle. So if there isn't a connection there, I feel like kids are not going to be as motivated to try. They're not going to put in the effort. They're going to be disinterested. But if they feel connected, especially with their class or their teacher or their tutor or their school, they're going to be like more involved. They're going to like actually genuinely want to be a part of that. So, well, how can you build connection if it's not there? Well, one thing I notice when I'm working with my students is, they never really communicate with their teachers. And so, maybe just talk to your teacher after class for a minute or two. And if that's too intimidating, maybe you can write an email to them, just asking about homework or something in the class, just to like put your face out there. Have your kids just get in front of their teachers to build a connection with them. And then, of course, sometimes the connection's just not going to be there. We're not going to connect with everyone that we meet. Not everyone's going to like everyone, and that's okay. But I would suggest if your kids like in school and they're just not really connecting with their school, maybe look into a different school. Maybe look into transferring out if possible, or transferring classes. These are all options. You don't have to stay in a bad situation just because, you were already committed. You can always change. So it's so important, connection. Make sure your kids are getting lots of connection in school, with friends, and hopefully with their teachers and educators and tutors outside of the classroom as well. All right, so we're about to go into the final part here where Huzefa is going to share some resources of his to really help parents out. And so I encourage you to watch all the way to the end to get all those goodies. So last but not least, the final part. Here we go. We've talked a little bit about your YouTube channel and how you use it for SAT preparation, but I also know that sometimes you do little like math music videos.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, why do you make those math music videos, and like, why do you think that they're so useful for kids?
Well, okay, the why is really easy to answer, and it was part of this whole journey of basically mixing together everything I like to do, right? We talk about being an enthusiast. Music is a huge, massive passion of mine. There was a period of time where I wanted to be a professional musician, a professional singer. And so when I started working in this field and I'm like, well, this is my business. Nobody's going to tell me to do something or not do something. I know how to make music. I know how to shoot a music video. I can do it. So why not do it? And then I was seeing other companies like, what's it called? I can't remember the names. But anyways, there's other companies that are literally built around making academic music videos and trying to teach through lyrics and whatnot. So I looked at some of the videos, and I used to have an education podcast back in the day too. It's sort of still around, but haven't had a guest in a while. So, but anyways, I interviewed this company, and we talked about their math music videos. And at the end, I'm like, man, I should do one. I can do one. And then I made one, and it was such a blast. I remember in my mind, I'm like, this is gonna go so viral. It did terrible in the views. And then, but I did it again. It was funny. Every time I release a new one, so I've done 18, I think now.
Wow,
yeah, and it's a huge time investment. The last one I did was over the summer on, what was it?
Yeah, because you put like production value.
I put a lot of time into it. Yeah, like I have a guy who produces and mixes it really nicely, and everything comes out, in my opinion, like I'm really happy with it. Like I like listening to it afterwards. And that's really my only metric is, do I like it? And if I like it, I'm happy. But that was it. I was just like, hey, this is going to be a blast. I did think they were going to be a lot bigger than they are. And that's definitely proven not to be true, but that's okay because I get a lot of enjoyment from it. I think the one thing that has come from it that's been interesting is I got to speak at some conferences about creating math music videos or how to teach other teachers on how to do it. That's been fun. And I think my biggest one, it's done decent, but the comments are pretty funny. And I'll say this, if in terms of learning the formulas and whatnot through musical mnemonics, that's super powerful. So the students that don't find them cringy, a lot do find them cringy, but the ones that don't find them cringy, or even sometimes the ones that do, they use them to learn special right triangles, quadratic formula, this and that. So it can be really powerful if you're trying to do that. Yeah,
I mean, I think even if it's cringy, like sometimes I even get those cringy songs stuck in my head.
Yeah, even more so.
I'm like singing them, and I'm like, I don't even like this song. Why am I singing it? But
exactly.
It's very powerful. It's like it really sticks.
It sticks, yeah.
Cool. I mean, so that really brings like an element of fun to learning, right? And like, do you believe that like learning should be fun and bringing that to your teaching sessions and all that?
I think life should be fun. I think everything should be fun. So absolutely. Obviously we can't be in la la land and think everything that we do is always going to be, there's always going to be elements of every day that are going to be tricky, or sometimes we have to do things that we're not totally looking forward to doing. But I definitely don't think when we're in it sort of depends on how you look at math. And if you look at it through the right lens, which is problem solving, which is solving puzzles, and I think it can be a lot of fun. Where it gets not fun is when you're stuck on something, you can't figure it out. It's frustrating. That sucks. But math in and of itself, honestly, should kind of always be fun if it's viewed the right way and it's broken down correctly. And on top of it, okay, if I'm having fun with it, or if whoever you hire to work with your student, whether it's teacher, tutor, whatever, if they're having fun, guess what? It transmits, right? Like the energy transmits. Maybe not always. Maybe some people are just not going to be receptive to that, but it's got a higher likelihood and a higher probability of them having fun when you're having fun. So yeah, it can be done. I'll put money on the fact that I think most of my students look forward. No, it's more than most. I would say, like, I can see a couple here and there. Like I said, we're doing standardized test prep, and maybe they're not like totally chomping at the bit to jump on, but they're like, well, we know we got to do it. But I say the vast majority are generally looking forward to our sessions, even when it's tricky stuff and maybe something that they'd rather go play with a friend, but they're gonna jump on and they're gonna have fun because they know that together we're gonna it's basically playing games. That's what math problems are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. I like to start sessions just like telling a little joke or like getting to know the kids, and then sometimes we'll just do like little yoga breaks in between and do like little stretch things, and yeah, just try and keep it fun and light because yeah, I feel like so many kids out there see like math as drudgery, but I've always just like loved it and thought of it as like a fun puzzle to solve, and I try and communicate, like I'm trying to like get them to have that attitude when I show up. And some people, when they resonate, and then they, like you said, they just like are excited to actually get tutored. It's really cool.
Some of those things you mentioned of like breaking it up are important because just like there's a circadian rhythm, there's rhythms in attention span and learning. So that's good. But see, that's part of the art. It's different for every kid. It's like you got to sense if they're tuning out and then mix it up. And by the way, though, like, think about it, right? They look at math as drudgery. Well, that's such a general statement. Think about this. Think about if I took a student and sat them down and said, hey, you're going to play Halo for an hour. That's going to be our session. But then while they're playing Halo, I'm like complaining the whole time, or I'm yelling at them. Why are you not doing better? Why are you not getting a higher score? And then I'm saying, nope, you got to play that level again, play it again. Or, just you can manipulate anything into being drudgery and not being fun, just like you can kind of flip it around. So it's like, I can take a game, even if it's awesome to most people most of the time, and make it terrible, or you can you can make it awesome.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way before, but that's true. So it's really about, the attitude of the tutor that's coming in and making sure that the kid is like inspired like they are.
And making them feel like they can do it.
Yeah, they can do it. They're empowered. Totally. So do you have any resources for parents just to share that they can help them out in anything really?
Well, can you give me some specifics, like in terms of test prep, in terms of general math?
Yeah, how about general math?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, do you have any good resources out there that you like to use or that, parents can find easily that they can help use at home with their kids?
Sure. So I'll tell you some of the ones that I use in general. Okay, so for drill and kill problems, meaning like, hey, I just learned exponents and I want to practice, I think IXL is a good resource. Now, again, IXL, the issue with IXL is that they have problems, and to complete sort of like a level, it takes a long time. You get something wrong, it can be frustrating. So it's not something where I say, hey, you take this module in IXL and solve it all the way through. That doesn't necessarily work, but hey, this is a great resource. A lot of times I'll do practice problems guided with them, or parents can do it with the students to get them extra practice. If you're talking about enrichment or supplemental stuff, there's a really good program called ALEKS, ALEKS. That is, you can get subscriptions for a bunch of my students at $20 a month, which is actually pretty darn reasonable if you consider what it provides. And it sort of gives you a way to jump around and do different types of math at your leisure. And it's really fun the way it's organized. I think that's a cool website in terms of just actual academic support. Now, if you're talking about enrichment activities, essentially math puzzles, right? That's like one of my big things. I'll a lot of times warm up with math games, math riddles, stuff like that. And I'm going to plug one of my channels in a second, but before I do that, let me give the other one. So first, you have TED Ed, has amazing math puzzles. Just type in TED Ed math puzzles. There's a bunch of them. There's story problems. My students love these problems and always ask for them. And you also have, what are some other good ones for, there's another really good YouTube channel called Mind Your Decisions. Those are definitely a lot harder, so you have to kind of really look through to find good ones that are reasonable. If you want super challenges, most of them are good, but if you want reasonable challenges, you got to sift through a little bit. My math channel, not my main company one, it's a much smaller channel. It's literally called Math Puzzles, and that one it's sort of like my speed that I like to give to my students, where you can break them down, solve them in 5 to 10 minutes. And then, gives the puzzle, presents it, and gives them my explanation where I get to teach a little bit. So that's a great resource there. Last thing I'll mention is a few different resources for arithmetic. So that's a big stumbling block for a lot of students, specifically multiplication, but even with addition facts and whatnot, there's some good apps. So I would say and this one is free. It's called Grand Prix, and it's through a website called, I believe it's called Archidemia. But if you just type in Grand Prix multiplication, you can find it. That one's great for multiplication. Then some paid ones, Quick Math on an iPad or an iPhone, which is pretty fun. Math Duel, which is pretty good. And then last but not least, one of the best board games of all time, in my opinion. Well, definitely for math and maybe even generally, I don't know, Prime Climb. Prime Climb is great, and it teaches addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division facts. And I would just bet money on it that you and, if your parents, you're gonna love it. If the kids, they're gonna love it. I didn't make it. I don't make anything from it, but it's a really good game.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. All right, and then final thing is just, you shared so much with us. Again, thank you so much. If viewers want to know more about you or get more info on you, where can they find you?
Sure. Yeah, lots of places, I guess. You can go to my website, the company website, www.scalarlearning.com. You can check us out on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search for Scalar Learning. And you can check us out on Instagram as well. We've got there's like 1,000+ posts of all these math infographics. Again, all that stuff is free. And where else? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Well, Josefa, thank you so much for coming on Pandemic Parenting. I really appreciate your input. It was very enlightening, and I hope to have you on again sometime.
Sweet, let's do it.
All right. So one of the things that I liked that Huzefa said right there is that he made these math music videos because it was fun for him. He enjoyed doing it, and he thought they were going to be like this big smashing hit, and it didn't really turn out that way as far as YouTube is concerned. But the key piece is that he said because of that, later on, he got to actually speak at some math conferences specifically about creating math music videos on YouTube, which is really cool, and which was not part of his original vision when he first started making these music videos. So I think that's really cool because we touched on this a little bit with Sam in the last episode of Pandemic Parenting, but it's like, help your kids do what they love now. Help them build up their passions and just do what's fun and bring that fun and exciting thing to whatever it is they're doing, whatever it is they like, because you never know when making a math music video now could lead to speaking at a conference a year or two down the line. Or for me, it was, becoming an electrical engineer and then becoming a hypnotherapist. I actually took what I learned from becoming a hypnotherapist and I use it in my business today to help kids relax their test anxiety. I use the visualization techniques that I learned from being a hypnotherapist, and now I apply that to my business today. And when I was doing that, I was just doing it to help my parents quit smoking. But I had no idea that later on, wow, I could use this to actually help kids reduce their test anxiety. So it's really a focus, just bringing your passion, doing what's fun, doing what's engaging, and then you never know what could happen in the future. So just be open to all the possibilities. Now we got a special treat for you, one of Huzefa's amazing math music videos. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Hopefully you don't find it too cringy.
Try to find the zeros of a quadratic. You got a few ways you can go. One way is by the quadratic formula. Just gotta know your ABCs. Ain't gonna be plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Ain't gonna be plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. Over 2a. Once we have found our ABCs, plug them in, then we can find our zeros quickly. Don't forget the plus and minus. Quadratic formula. The factor won't just complete the square. Quadratic formula. Factor won't just complete the square. Before you use the quadratic formula, there is something you should know. You'll find the roots much faster, factoring out. Yeah. Let me show you how it goes. You can begin with 2 equals 65. It's 5 and 13. Now we can find our roots real quickly. When we bifurcate, once we solve, we got negative 13. Don't forget about negative 5. Quadratic formula. The factor won't just complete the square. Just complete the square. Quadratic formula. Yeah. The factor won't just complete the square. Yeah. Another method is called completing the square. Yeah. Show you how it works. Let's take the last quadratic that we had. First subtract the 65. Right in half of 18, which is 9. And square it, which is 81. And add to both sides. Left side equals x plus 9 squared equals 60. Take the square root. X plus 9 equals plus or minus 4. And we bifurcate. X equals negative 13 and negative 5. Same as before. Yeah. Quadratic formula. Factor won't just complete the square. That's what I'm talking about. Quadratic formula. The factor won't just complete the square. Complete it. Quadratic formula. The factor won't just complete the square. We got 3 different quadratic formula. Gotta learn them all. The factor won't just complete the square.
All right, that's all we got for you on pandemic parenting today. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and just leave them in the comment box below, or you can email me at greg@thinkанdevolve.academy. I love hearing from you parents out there. Let me know what you want to see on the show next. What questions do you have? What concerns are you going through? What problems? And then I will figure out a way, find someone that can address those problems and bring them on the show. So reach out to me. I love hearing from you all. Love you all. Take it easy. Bye.